Resident Evil games have employed different camera perspectives throughout the series, each offering a unique gaming experience. Let's compare the first-person, third-person, and fixed camera perspectives in Resident Evil games by briefly describing each one and going over their pros and cons. The classic Resident Evil games, especially those from the early titles like Resident Evils 1, 2, and 3, utilized fixed camera angles, meaning that the camera was preset in specific locations within the environment, changing as the player moved between areas. The pros of this perspective are, first, it builds tension and atmosphere by limiting the player's view and creating surprise elements, such as when you enter an area and you hear an enemy is close, but you cannot see them or the layout of the room until you move up. Second, it enables cinematic presentation and carefully crafted scenes, since the camera is held in a specific place deliberately in order to frame the game in a certain way. Third, it encourages strategic gameplay, as players need to consider their position in relation to the fixed camera and how they move, especially during combat. The cons of this perspective are, first, controls can be awkward, since the character's movement remains relative to the camera angle, meaning that it's easy, especially at first, to accidentally walk in the direction opposite to the one you intended. Second, the limited field of view can make navigation challenging, especially when combined with the previously discussed awkward controls. Third, it may feel outdated to some players, since of course it harks back to games made over 20 years ago. Resident Evil 4 introduced the over-the-shoulder third-person perspective, which has been used in subsequent titles like Resident Evils 5 and 6. With this perspective, the camera follows the character from behind, providing a more dynamic and immersive experience than the fixed camera perspective. The pros of this perspective are, first, it allows for more precise controls and better aiming, especially in combat situations. This makes gameplay more satisfying and easier. Second, it offers a better sense of immersion and connection to the character, since it feels like you are them. You see the world from their perspective, instead of feeling like you are just watching over them as they traverse the environment. Additionally, you can see them from up closer. Third, it is a more modern perspective that makes the series feel newer, and it allows it to cater to contemporary gaming preferences. The cons of this perspective are, first, it arguably diminishes the horror and the tension, since players have a clearer view of their surroundings and they have more fluid controls that enable them to fight and move better and easier. Second, it may sacrifice the strategic and suspenseful elements found in the classic fixed camera perspective, since positioning is less important as is knowing how to move. Resident Evil 7 marked a departure from the third-person perspective, adopting instead a first-person view. This perspective change was kept for Resident Evil Village. The pros of this perspective are, first, it enhances the feeling of immersion by putting players directly in the character's shoes and giving them the closest look possible of the environment and the creatures. Second, it is a fresh, new take on the series and it caters to the popularity of first-person horror games, which admittedly I feel are on a decline recently, though they were most certainly in back when RE7 was released. Third, it intensifies the horror experience, as players see the world through the character's eyes, getting up close and personal with terrifying monsters. Additionally, this perspective pretty much eliminates peripheral vision, since you can only see what is in front of you, and you have no idea what's happening behind you, unless you turn completely around, which makes what was previously in front of you now be behind you. Therefore, there is always the looming tension of what lurks in the sides you cannot see, and you can't simply turn the camera like you can in third person. The cons of this perspective are, first, some players might find it disorienting or less familiar when compared to the traditional third-person perspective, especially for those unfamiliar with first-person shooters. Second, it limits, or in the case of RE7 and the Village, basically completely eliminates the visibility of the player's character, which impacts the connection between the player and the protagonist. We pretty much don't know what Ethan looks like, which makes him a more difficult character to relate to, though thankfully he is at least not a silent protagonist, which is common in first-person games. Now, before I end the video, I want to briefly go over the question of which perspective should/will be used for the next Resident Evil, aka Resident Evil 9. Well, simply put, it comes down to either fixed camera or third person, since the former is classic Resident Evil and I could see it being used as a positive draw for fans, since it means that the series would return to its roots like Call of Duty and Battlefield did by going back to World War II a few years ago. While the latter is the most beloved perspective and it was introduced by what many consider to be the best game in the franchise. Additionally, these two perspectives are the most popular ones, as evidenced by this poll I conducted recently. Thank you to everyone who voted, by the way. So it's got to be fixed camera or third person. While first person was a fresh approach for the series, it just wasn't that well received and it's the perspective that feels the least like Resident Evil. There is, however, a consideration to be made for what type of game RE9 will be. If it is to be more horror focused, then fixed camera or first person will serve it better, while third person is the way to go if it aims to be more geared towards action. Now, as for which one I personally want, I think a modern game with fixed camera angles would be amazing. I would fully welcome it. However, I would be lying if I said that it would be my preferred route. Fact of the matter is, I am still very much a sucker for third person in my Resident Evil games. Ultimately, the choice between these perspectives often comes down to personal preference. Each perspective has its strengths and weaknesses, and the reception varies among players based on their gaming background and expectations. The Resident Evil series has successfully evolved over time by experimenting with different camera perspectives, catering to a diverse audience with varying degrees of success. One thing is for sure though, the series has definitely proven its worth by seamlessly adapting to a variety of gameplay styles in order to deliver several different but equally unforgettable and thrilling experiences. Please let me know in the comments down below which perspective you prefer and which one you want to see in the next Resident Evil game. Also, please do drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and please do subscribe for more Resident Evil. Doing these two things would really help me out a lot. Additionally, down in the description I have affiliate links for GameStop, which is where I buy all my gaming related stuff, affiliate links for Amazon, which is where I buy all my stuff that is not gaming related or groceries, and a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page. These links will all allow you to support me directly if you would like to. I would very much appreciate it. Also, I have a link to my main channel where I cover Pokemon. If this is something that would interest you, then please check said channel out. Thank you so very much for watching, and I really hope to see you in the next video.